There is always this couple or this one person at an Indian wedding, friends with the bride and groom, that is just standing there like, what is going on? Well, this video is just for you. What's up everyone, Alain Martinez here. Welcome to my channel where I'll be discussing today the different parts of an Indian wedding. This episode is meant for those who are not very familiar with Indian culture or have never been to an Indian wedding before. At this point in our career, we have shot countless Indian weddings. In fact, it's almost half of our business shooting Indian weddings. I love Indian culture and I love all the colors and all the traditions that there are in their weddings. They're very lively weddings and I love shooting them. At this point in my career, we've shot countless Indian weddings, many of which only one side is Indian and the other one it's not. We live in this beautiful cultural melting pot of a world where, all different kinds of cultures come together and it's a beautiful thing. Just recently, we shot a wedding where the bride was Indian, the groom was Chinese, and they got married in Italy. Go figure. But as long as they're in love and they want us there to document their event, we're there. My point is that not everyone attending is Indian, and certainly not everyone attending knows what is going on. This video is also for any vendor that may be potentially dealing with an Indian wedding for the first time. If you're a wedding planner, you're dealing with an Indian bride for the first time, you might want to be a little more familiar with the terms that I'll show in this video. If you're a photographer or a cinematographer bidding on an Indian wedding, you may find some value in this video so you don't sound totally lost when talking to the bride about her wedding. Or if you're just the person who's fascinated with Indian culture and weddings, then stick around for the next few minutes as I'll drop some 411 on you that I have acquired over years as a photographer of Indian weddings. The first thing you have to know is that it's a multi-day event. Sometimes in the States could be as little as 2 days, in most cases 3, we've shot as many as 4, and sometimes in India could be as many as 7 days for a whole wedding. They are an explosion of colors and high energy and lots of traditions that go back as far as 2,000 years. Some of which you will not understand. One of the first events that take place is called the HENNA. It's typically a ladies only event until later on when the groom and some of the men show up. But during the ladies only portion is when the ladies get painted with MEHNDI, those beautiful tattoos that they get in their hands and feet. Photographers and cinematographers, this is a good opportunity for you to get some very creative shots. Here, let me share with you a few of the shots that I've taken before. Typically later on that night, you'll have what's called a SANGEET. A SANGEET is like a welcome reception, but they do a few family performances or skits. There's a lot of variations of performances. Sometimes they have singers from Bollywood coming in and doing a performance. Depending on where they're from in India, they might do something called the GARBA, where all the guests dance around a circle and they hit some sticks. It's also very fun to watch and photograph. Then the next morning is typically started with some prayers. If you're just a guest and not immediate family, you might not be involved in those prayers. But if you're a photographer and a cinematographer, you will more than likely be expected to cover these events. It's followed by a few different traditional ceremonies that are very fun to watch and photograph. And then it's time for the BARAAT. A BARAAT is a pre-sessional ceremony where the groom's side goes to meet the bride's side. It's typically led by a guy with loud music. There's a lot of dancing, energy, music, happiness. There's a lot of things happening. It's one of my favorite parts of an Indian wedding to photograph. The groom usually is all the way at the back of the BARAAT, typically riding on a horse or an elephant, or in cases where there's no animal allowed in the venue, they ride on horsepower. Usually they choose a very nice car and the groom rides in the back of the car. This is about a 45-minute procession. This is where the groom's side meets the bride's side. They exchange garlands and they do another little ceremony there. And then it's time for the actual Hindu ceremony. The groom walks in first, just like in any other wedding that you've seen. And as soon as he walks in, his shoes are stolen. So if you're sitting there wondering why somebody ran away with his shoes, don't worry, it's part of a game where he will have to pay money back later to get his shoes back. Then about 10 to 15 minutes into the ceremony, the bride walks in with a big entourage. Not just with her dad, but sometimes uncle and cousins, and sometimes even carrying her across the aisle. The ceremony is held under what's called a mandap. It's their version of a chuppah or an arch, but it's called a mandap, and no shoes are allowed on top there. These Indian ceremonies could be quite lengthy, with as little as 1 hour and as long as 2.5 hours. Be expected to be there for a while. And once the ceremony is over, do not expect the kiss to seal the wedding. Indian couples do not kiss at the end of their ceremony. It's just not what they do. Rarely do they even walk down the aisle as a processional. Usually they stay up there and start family portraits. Speaking of which, Indian family portraits could be another lengthy process. One of the things I love about Indian culture is how close connected they are with their families and relatives and even extended family members. So when picture time comes around, every uncle and every aunt sometimes needs to be in pictures. So be prepared for that. Then there's a big break, sometimes as many as 4 and 5 hours before the next event starts. And if you're a photographer or cinematographer, this is the chance for you to recharge your batteries both in your bodies and in your cameras, because you are going to need it later. An Indian reception is very similar to any other type of Western reception, with the exception that the family is probably vegetarian and there's no meat being served at the wedding. However, some of the dishes are delicious anyway. There also might not be hard liquor served at the wedding, so wine is going to have to do. But that does not stop the party from being amazing. Indian weddings are some of the most fun and lively weddings that we shoot. They'll be dancing there until the end of the party, so be prepared for some awesome action shots. And like I said before, the rest of the party is very similar to any other wedding that you've been to. So, you know, if you're still lost at this point in the wedding, there's just not much more I can do for you. So just go with the flow and enjoy the wedding. And there you have it. I hope you found some of this information useful. If you're a bride who's having non-Indian guests attending your wedding, share this video with them so they're a little more familiar with what's going to happen during your wedding days. If you're not already a subscriber, consider subscribing and hit that bell so you can be notified when I upload a new video. It's good to see you here, and I'll see you in the next one.